Raycon Gunner here, and I'm going to go through PsychScape Historical's Brawl and Blade combat system. I had a couple Legend Masters and players reach out to me to summarize how combat works, and I want to assure you that in PsychScape Historical, combat is fast and it's easy, and it's as realistic as we could get it to keep it fast and easy. That's the key here. It's a game. We want to have fun. I don't want to spend 4 hours in one combat situation. I want combat to be fast, easy, and as realistic as we can, but keeping that fast and easy. So remember that as you're playing. And it's deadly. Combat in PsychScape Historical is deadly. Remember that. Think twice before getting into combat, because one move and you're gone. So combat starts just like in all games. Starts with initiative. You roll initiative each round with a D10. The lower roll acts first. You can roll initiative as an individual or as a group. It's up to the Legend Master how he wants to break up combat. You can have initiative bonuses. So if you have instincts, you might get bonuses to your higher instincts, gets bonuses to your initiatives. So those would be subtracted from your die rolls. So let's say I rolled a 1 and I got a +3, it'd be -3. That would be my initiative. Combat turn lasts 5 to 15 seconds and represents one action like shooting, moving, or shouting. 5 seconds is a long time, especially if you're trying to stab a guy with a knife or shooting him with a pistol. I can pull the trigger a lot of times in 5 seconds. Combat round consists of one turn per participant, meaning, everybody gets their turn, including their NPCs. And then certain longer actions, like circling behind an enemy, might take multiple turns. And that's up to your Legend Master to decide, hey, that's 2 turns. That's going to take you 30 seconds to do that. I really encourage people to act it out. So if you think you can do it faster, act it out. And that shows the LM and shows everybody at the table that, yes, indeed, this action is that fast. I really encourage that, if you can at the table. To hit calculation and attack resolution. So to get your to hit number, and that's really the key with all of your skills in PsychScape Historical, is you get a to hit number. And so what you do is you take that to hit number, and we're going to use marksmanship here as the example because we're talking about combat. So marksmanship is the main skill, and that skill is paired with agility. That's what it goes to. And so marksmanship and agility go together, and that's listed in the PsychScape Historical rules. And then you have a sub skill. So if you're proficient in pistol or rifle or bow and spear or crossbow, so to speak, you would take those things. So if I'm using the pistol, I would take my agility score, my marksmanship main skill score, my pistol score, right? I would add all 3 of those together and then divide by 3. And that's my to hit number. And that's your character's to hit number. That doesn't get modified except for environmental factors, which we'll talk about in a second. And to hit, you simply take your D100 and you roll less than your to hit number. That's what hits the target. So if I roll under, so let's say it's 38, right? I have to roll under a 38 to hit, and then I hit the target. Environmental factors may apply. Right, there could be poor lighting, so that's +10, meaning I add +10 to my roll. So if I roll a 38, but there's poor lighting, that's +10. It's a 48, and I miss. Right. If they're in cover, that could be a +20 to the roll. And so again, I would miss if I was rolling a 38 and I needed a 38. That'd be +20, right? And so on and so forth. You could get negatives to your roll, meaning they'd be positive. They're positive in the sense of a bonus, right? I know it's kind of backwards, but I like the idea of us rolling low. That's why it works that way. Anyways, you could be aiming, and that could give you bonuses, and that's up to the Legend Master to decide that. So aiming lowers to hit, making your attack more accurate, but then you're aiming, so if you're aiming, you're not moving, which means you might be easier to hit. Hit location is random. So in combat, yeah, you might have an opportunity to aim, but like say if you're in a gunfight, like at the OK Corral, those guys are just shooting, right? And yeah, maybe they're better at it than others. Wyatt Earp says, it's better to be like slow and accurate, right, than fast and not. And so maybe he was a little bit more calm under the pressure, right? And some of those guys were like that, and that's why they lived. But they're not; they're just shooting at the target. If they hit somebody in the head, it's pretty miraculous. So I wanted to keep it simple, and so we just broke up the body into these eight pieces, and you roll a d8, and that's where you hit. Now, obviously, if you can't see somebody's lower body, right, then the LM can make a decision. Maybe you just roll the 1 to 4 or 1 to 6, and that determines where you hit. But combat is random unless you're aiming. And even if you're aiming, it's still kind of random in combat because you're taking fire. You're getting shot at. Somebody's trying to punch you or slice your head off with a sword. Like, combat is crazy. And so, being able to hit in a specific spot, even if you're trained, is very difficult. Critical success and failure. So, because it's a game, obviously we have to have this, and it makes combat more fun, and it makes it more deadly. But if you roll a 0-1 to 0-5, it's an auto hit. That's your quote-unquote natural 20, so to speak. This critical success ignores penalties and deals double damage or other extra effects. The extra effects are in the critical hit charts. So if a character isn't wearing armor, and they get hit by a weapon, not only is it a critical hit and it causes double damage, but you also get to roll on the critical hit chart for that weapon, which could have catastrophic effects, meaning instant death, loss of limbs. It's brutal. So, wearing armor is a big thing. And then those are historical periods like the Old West where they weren't wearing armor. If you got hit, by a 45, it's game over, unless if you get a belly shot, anything. I was just reading a book where the guy accidentally discharged his weapon, dropped it, shot a guy in the knee. Took him 2 weeks to die. His whole knee was obliterated. And this is in the 1880s, or sorry, the 1860s. And the guy just, was in and out of consciousness for 2 weeks before he died. It's pretty brutal. Movement and terrain. So obviously there's got to be some kind of movement rule here. Movement is, again, this is theater of the mind. So basically, jogging speed is your agility divided by 5, and then your running speed is twice your jogging speed, and your walking speed is half your jogging speed. So basically your jogging speed is the base, and then you modify running and walking. Now, endurance plays into that. Obviously, you can't run at 2 times your jogging speed forever, and so those are modified by the Legend Master. Use discretion, right? There are terrain penalties. These are some examples of how it can modify your movement, so how fast people can move. Dense jungle, obviously, it's cut in half. Mountains, you're going up. Swamps and marshes are worse. Crossing a river, all of that. And then, obviously, weather could affect that as well. So that's all up to Legend Master's discretion. Now, hand-to-hand combat, basic versus advanced. So every character gets basic hand-to-hand, right? Basic Brawl and Blade, it's a free skill. Basic Brawl and Blade is punches, kicks, grapples. Just, you assume anybody can throw a punch, right? It may not be that efficient, but they're not necessarily trained in some kind of, hand-to-hand combat, like advanced Brawl and Blade. And this applies to sword fights. This applies to, any kind of handheld weapon falls into this hand-to-hand combat. And so you can actually use these different attacks, and they're all calculated the same way, right? So you take your base skill, right, and then you or your base ability, then your main skill, and then you have your sub skills. You add those together, divide by 3, and those gives you your 2 hits for each one. So you might be, better at feints and counters, depending on your score, as opposed to maybe your strike, right? Or your specialized attack. So when you take advanced brawl and blade, you get a specialized style attack, right? So let's say karate, you might be able to do a special attack that gives you a bonus, that kind of thing. And basically what it happens is you declare what you're going to do, right? Are you attacking? Are you grappling? Are you feinting? Are you blocking? Right? What are you doing? And then you roll whether or not you can successfully do that, while your opponent, they roll what they're going to do. So hand-to-hand combat can be very nuanced. This is where it can get a little slowed down, a little bogged down, but this gets the realism. So range combat is really fast. You're rolling just that one dice. Hand-to-hand combat, you might be blocking it. You might try to block it. Hey, I blocked that attack. Okay, great. Now he's going to come back around and try to attack you again, or he's going to block, right? Your opponent's going to block, and he blocks your attack. So there can be a lot of back and forth and a lot of nuance in this, and you can have a really fun, say, sword fight together. Can be really interesting. And it's still pretty fast. It's a little bit more realistic, and again, it's very, very deadly. Same principle, though. You take your ability, your main skill, your sub skill, add those together, divide by 3. That's your to hit number. Then you just declare what action you're going to do each round. So here's an example scenario. So ambush. So Juan gets ambushed by 3 Aztec Eagle warriors in Tenochtitlan, and he rolls initiative, right? And he acts after one of the warriors. So there's a spear thrust. He has standard defense, so he dodges that one, right? And fires his harquebus, but he misses and drops the weapon, right? Because the harquebus takes, 30 seconds or more, a minute to reload, right? So he doesn't have that kind of time. So he drops it. So he switches to his dagger and he feints, right? So he gets a bonus to his next attack. That should actually say plus right there. That is right. That's a minus. And then strikes the warrior with his standard attack, hitting him with his dagger, right? Facing multiple foes, he chooses an all-out defense for 2 rounds because he's getting attacked by 3 guys, right? So he's blocking. So he does that all-out defense, meaning that's all he's doing is fending off attacks, and he blocks both the grapple and a strike. So he blocks that for 1 attack. He makes it successful. He's able to block it. He breaks free from the grapple, doing a resist, right? And he counters with another dagger thrust, storing a critical hit to the abdomen. Now, the Aztecs didn't wear a lot of armor, and sometimes their armor that they did wear was ornamental. It didn't really have a lot of protection. And so he stabs the guy, gets him a critical hit in the stomach. That could be it for the guy. He's over with, right? It's double damage. His belly sliced open, his guts are falling out, like it's really bad. He's out of combat. He steps back, right? He's not really fighting probably anymore. Finally, he unleashes his specialized attack because he's a conquistador, so he's a trained warrior. He knows what's going on, and despite the penalty to hit, he rolls and he gets expanded critical range, so that bonus. He gets a bonus to his critical hit attack, so he does that, and he gets another critical hit, striking him in the chest. He punctures the heart or whatever it is. So that scene kind of illustrates how the fight can go. You definitely want to have a weapon that ups your advantage for sure. Notice he dropped his harquebus after he missed. He didn't try to reload that thing. He switched to his backup, which was his dagger. And here's just kind of summarize this. All right, so this is how combat works. You roll initiative for each round using a D10, and then the combat turn is 5 to 15 seconds, allows for 1 action. Calculate the to hit. It's, again, the example is your main skill, your sub skill, and your ability score divided by 3, and then you want to roll under that on a D100. Applying any environmental modifiers, that's up to the LM, right, in this situation. Use the D8 for the random hit, so where you hit on the body. If you get a critical hit, it's double damage, and you may be rolling on the critical hit chart. And then 95 to 100 is a critical failure. It's an auto miss, a misfire, something happens to your weapon. It's combat. Your buddy bumps you and knocks your rifle out of your hand, and now you're fishing it out of the river. Your movement speed is your agility divided by 5 for jogging, and then your running and your walking are modified by that. Your basic Brawl and Blade offers simple attack and defense, and then advanced Brawl and Blade adds that all-out attack, all-out defense, feints, counterattacks, immobilize, resist, and then that special attack. So the special attack gives you that modifier to hit, but it makes that critical. So basically, you take it's a -10. It should say +10 there to your hit. So if I roll a 1, I add 10 to that. I get an 11, right? So I can still hit and get a critical, right? On an 11 or 12, it's harder to do, but you can do it. And it modifies that critical hit range, right? So from 1 to 12. And then you declare your actions clearly, use feint, cover, and counters, special attack. So you want to describe your actions, describe what you're doing. So I hope this helps. Helps get you started. Again, it's super easy. Don't overthink it. Keep combat fun and as realistic as possible. And really, really, really think before you get into combat. Make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you have a plan. Or one move is your last move. Raycon Gunner out.